I just watched a video about the AMOC, or the Atlantic Meridian overturning current, and it was a very professional video. I mean, the production quality was very good. Nothing like the videos I make, which are a bit crappy. But this video was pretty good, and it had good information. And I was quite impressed. But I was very impressed with the subtle propaganda that would be woven into it. And this is the sort of thing that we are fed again and again. And there was something like 1,400 comments underneath the video. And this was apparently, it said it was the first video on this new channel. Well, that's amazing, isn't it? A new video, which is slick and got good production, on a new channel, and it's already got loads of views and loads of comments. It's obviously being promoted by the algos. And like I say, it was very slick. And I felt straight away that I had to make a counter video. And I haven't got really time for this, but there's so much of this crap out there. And people need to be warned so they know what to look for. Because although it contains some useful information, it also contained a lot of falsehoods. So I'm going to do a quick and dirty video, just a quick and dirty pushback here. Now, you'll be surprised to know that this video, which is about this current switching off, it's a bit like the Gulf Stream current, but the Gulf Stream current, which starts in Florida and goes all the way to England, to Cornwall, that is a part of the mid-Atlantic, well, the Atlantic Meridional overturning current. It's only one of the arms of the current, we could say. But the thing is that in all this video, which contains some good information about this current, and that they're afraid it might stop, and if it stops, the Earth is going to get a lot colder, because the warmth that this current spreads heats up quite a bit of Europe. So the danger is that this it looks like this current is decreasing. And it looks like it's at some point in the future is going to come to a stop. And of course, they want to blame this on global warming. And straight away, I listened to the video, and you know what? The word solar or sun virtually doesn't occur in the video. That would be like someone giving a weather forecast and not mentioning the sun or the temperature or anything like that. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's like me doing a video on a sports car and talking about the tires and how the tires should be inflated, and that if they're too soft, it can cause drag, and that can slow the car down, and the car won't perform properly because its tires are, because there's more friction and resistance. So you need to get the right pressure on the tires, because it's detrimental to the car's performance, and the car might lose the race. Blah 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 blah. And to go on for hours about the car's tires and not say a single thing about the car's engine. I mean, it's utterly ridiculous. The biggest thing in the sky. I mean, okay, switch the sun off. Let's pretend we have no sun at all. Take the sun out the equation. What happens? What happens to the Earth if the sun goes dark? What happens? Well, there you've got your answer. The sun is the driver of the climate, no matter what way you look at it. It's not what we do that affects the climate. We can only affect the climate minimally. Minimally. It's what the sun does. And I'm going to just go through this and point out some, it's quick and dirty, some errors which really bugged me.
Water temperatures. The size of sediment grains on the ocean floor reveal current speeds above it and allow us to reconstruct past sea surface temperatures and other parameters. What they suggest is a long-term weakening of the AMOC since the early or even mid-20th century. Climate models have long predicted its decline in response to global warming, and the physics behind these predictions is understood. In addition, the paleoclimatic data also strongly points to human activities as the cause, in that AMOC weakening coincides with a period of unprecedented modern global warming. In short, it's very likely that humans have significantly increased the conditions in which the AMOC is prone to being unstable. We can observe several changes here. There's a rise in greenhouse gas emissions and Arctic amplification. There's also an increasingly enhanced water cycle, intensified by more energy from the sun, which creates more extreme weather like floods and droughts. There's also more evaporation in the subtropics and more precipitation in the high latitudes. Now, these things are all happening before we've even mentioned melting sea ice.
Now, this clip has got so much wrong with it, it's hard to know where to start. But we've got massive flooding at the moment in Queensland. Now, there's a huge area that is underwater and it's soaking away very slowly. Now, Australia is a place of droughts and floods. It always has been, but we seem to be getting a lot more flooding. And there's increased precipitation, as this video said, everywhere. There seems to be flooding everywhere. But what it doesn't tell you, and that's a lie by omission, and this is what they do, what they don't tell you is that a couple of years ago, a volcano near Tonga, called Hunga Tonga, blew up. It blew up, and it increased. It just disappeared. This little was underwater, partly above water volcano, and it threw so much moisture into the atmosphere. In fact, into the stratosphere. It took 2 years for that moisture to come down, and it threw at least 10%. Some estimates go as high as 14% more moisture in the stratosphere, and that's got to come down. That's going to rain out. So all the flooding you're seeing is nothing at all to do with global warming. It's volcanic and seismic activity. It's actually space weather, and there's every indication that the sun can be, and especially solar minimums, can be linked to increased seismic and volcanic activity. So this just one volcano blew between 10 and 14% more moisture into the stratosphere. And that's what's raining out. And that's fresh water. And that fresh water will also end up in the sea, and it will also end up changing the salinity and changing and therefore changing the AMOC. But they don't tell you that because their modeling is simplistic. And I'll just say that today I watched a video on quantum modeling, and it was quantum modeling of atoms. And they were saying that, and this is very interesting because the same is applicable to all types of modeling in science. In science, Bohr and Niels, when they made the atomic model and did the calculations, these physicists and all that, they couldn't calculate, they couldn't get the scientific data, the observable data, to fit properly with their calculations, with their maths, until they decided that, well, what we have to do is we have to treat the nucleus of the atom as a fixed point. And if we treat the nucleus as a fixed point, then we can do all our formulas to do with the electrons, the energy, and all this sort of stuff, and the speed and the probability and all the fancy stuff they do. All that works if we consider the nucleus, the protons and the neutrons, as a fixed point. But the thing is, the protons and neutrons have their own structure, and they're discovering now that there's a geometrical structure, and that they also have an influence on each other and on the whole structure of the atom. So they thought, now that we've got quantum computing, that will allow us to do these massive the computing in these modeling of the atom, and they've managed to do it with hydrogen, with the simplest atom. they managed to do the calculations, the probability calculations, and all the other fancy stuff. I'll put a link afterwards down below so you can watch the video. It's very interesting. But the point is, it can do it with one atom, which has got one which has got one electron going around it and a very small nucleus. It can do that calculation. But hydrogen comes as a pair. It's H2. And when you add the other atom to it, so you've got two electrons and two cores, it can't do the calculations. It becomes too complex because of the electrons repel each other and they influence, and you've got two nuclei and all the other stuff. It becomes more complicated. And then when you start looking at some of the higher elements and then some of the higher structures, where you get carbon rings with the different angles and the different isomers and all this stuff, it's just impossible to calculate, even with a quantum computer. And that's because the only way they could do these mathematical formulas is by making certain assumptions at the beginning. Because the assumptions at the beginning that, we'll treat the nucleus as a fixed point, allow the model to work. But when you take that away and say, well, we're not going to use these assumptions, we're not going to have a fixed point anymore. We're just going to let the quantum computer, because it can do so many calculations at the same time, we're going to just let it calculate these and see if that structure comes out of the calculation without giving it this a priori assumptions. And it can't do it. It can't do it. And it's the same with every model. You start off with certain assumptions and you leave certain things out. You get the results you want. You'll get results you want. And they've got certain physical data. Yes, they take samples, they take temperatures, they take proxy data, like they did with the grains in the sea to see, from the grain size, they can tell whether the current flowed faster or slower at certain times. But it's only a snapshot. So you're talking about models and modeling, and these people have an incentive to find what they want to find, because this is not about saving the environment. The climate has always changed. It has always changed. Now I'm going to just show you a little video about Hunga Tonga putting 14% more, between 10 and 14% more moisture. And a lot of these things that he said in this video, I've just put it into Google, and Google's got its own AI, and it gives me mostly correct answers. I know it hallucinates, but it saves a lot of work. You could just test it by putting stuff into Google, and I'll show you in a minute, and it'll come out with reasonable answers that show that what they're saying is just absolute nonsense. So we just Google, then give us the historical account of the AMOC, the Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation. And it tells us, well, it's a crucial ocean current system, and it's collapsed and restarted repeatedly during the late Pleistocene period, including the last ice age, as evidenced by Heinrich events and sediment cores. So it's happened repeatedly. Well, must have been all those cars that the cavemen were driving. That must have caused it. I mean, it's so easy to Google this and find out, and they'll come up with excuses. But the fact is, this is a part of the natural climate cycle. Ice ages, interglacials, and we're in an interglacial now. We're actually in in a warm period, in a warm interglacial period. The ice age hasn't finished yet officially. And again, just asking questions in Google. While a full-blown ice age is unlikely, a collapse of the AMOC could trigger a regional cooling event similar to the Younger Dryas and lead to significant climate shifts, especially in Europe. Now, we know that there was an abrupt climate warming event, which is a good thing, but there was an abrupt climate warming event approximately 11,600 years ago, and that marked the end of the Younger Dryas and the beginning of the Holocene epoch, which we've been in for the last 11,700 years. So it warmed up. Something changed. They don't know what changed. They don't know what brought the Younger Dryas on. They thought at first it might have been a magnetic excursion, but then from looking at the data they've got and the theories they've got, they decided it was probably a bolide or a big meteor or something that hit Earth and triggered this the Younger Dryas, which was a mass extinction event. And it's interesting that we have that the ancients must have known that something was coming, because we have Gobli Tepki, the I probably pronounced it wrong. It's Göbekli Tepe. That's better. Göbekli Tepe. That ancient site, which is recently uncovered, the ancients actually covered it all in with rubble. So they filled this site, which had monuments and structures. They filled it with rubble, as put it basically underground, abandoned it. So they knew something was coming. That's about the time of the Younger Dryas. They knew something was coming. Big events were coming that would change things, and you would have thought that it would come back afterwards and dig it up. So I don't know what happened to them, but they covered this all over with dirt and rubble. So they knew something was happening. It was in the region of Turkey, and here it is from bird's eye view. It's a massive site. They've only uncovered part of it, and I think the people who built it filled it all with dirt and rubble to preserve it, and then they disappeared. So I don't know what happened to them, but because they covered it all with dirt, it was well preserved, and so were the carvings. And but this comes from roughly that period, and the carvings have to do, some of the scientists say, with astrological data. So I think they knew something was about to happen. And this is from nearly 12,000 years ago. This is apparently they think it's to do with the planets and the sun and star formations. We're not going to go into that now because that's not our remit. But the point is that the climate has always changed, always, and sometimes very abruptly, and sometimes catastrophically. You think the story of Noah's flood was just made up? Whatever you might think about the Bible or myth or whatever else, this lived in the minds of ancient people because it was a catastrophic event that happened, and it was common to all cultures. So something big happened, and it abruptly changed things. It was probably a dance, Oscar Heinrich Bond event with glaciers melting and sea levels suddenly rising and breaking through the Bosphorus and things like that. Who knows? But big events like this have happened in the history of civilized man. And they mention things in this video like the Sahara Desert is drying out and and blah 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 blah. But in actual fact, around about the 14,500 to 5,000 years ago, it was lush and green. And believe you me, the people in charge, the people in the know, understand that we're going through a big event again that is going to change the grow zones on Earth. Because otherwise, I mean, he says in his video, and I'm not even going to look up the clip because I can't be bothered, but he says in his video that the Sahara Desert is going to get drier and blah, 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 and the monsoons are going to change. Well, yeah, he's correct. The monsoons are going to change, but it's not going to get drier. It's going to become a new grow zone. Why do you think they built one of the largest dams in Africa, in Ethiopia, the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, or the GERD? And it's a massive dam. It's really big, and it's now full. This is one of the driest places on Earth, and it's now full. Now, how on earth would they get money from the World Bank to build this dam if they didn't know that the climate was going to change? They know full well the climate's going to change. Africa used to be full. That whole area, the Sahara Desert, used to be full of big lakes. Libya is interesting. Gaddafi was building a network, an agricultural network, and he was connecting all the aquifers because there's a lot of water underground in Libya, and he was doing all that. He was putting all the infrastructure down because he knew as well that things were going to change, and he was connecting up all the aquifers and doing all this work. And what happened? The West bombed Libya to pieces. They know that North Africa, is going to be the next food bowl for the world. All the places that are now dry and desert, and this desert, if you go and look at a world bowl, it stretches from the Sahara right across Arabia, right into the Mongol plateau. Has all been desert. Well, that's all going to change. When the monsoons change, all that area that is now desert will become green. Let's have a look if we can see that on Google Map, on the Google World Bowl. Do you see from here, from North Africa, over here Arabia, and here Iran, and here it's a bit cloudy in this picture here, but here all the way up onto the Mongolian plateau, which is very high and very cold. So you've got like a belt going from here, from here all the way across Arabia, all the way across northern Africa. And Africa is much bigger than the maps suggest. Is much bigger. This area here is much bigger than America. If this becomes a grow zone, and especially if this is added to it, and this whole stretch is massive. If that becomes green and lush, and other areas will become colder, possibly, and drier. But this will be like, it's like a crescent. It is a fertile crescent, isn't it? It's like a crescent shape, isn't it? But the thing is, if grow zones change, that changes the geopolitics, and this is why you're seeing all these nations fighting. Israel wants this whole area here, up to the rivers, right? Saudi Arabia is building a city down here in a place which is now desert, but it won't be desert for long. And so all these countries that border this whole area, this will become the place where which is extremely fertile. So it will change, and it is changing, and certain people know that change is coming, and they're just lying to you, because what they're doing is they're going to collapse everything, and they're trying to suck out all the wealth, and then they want a system of complete control, which will be under AI and central bank digital currency. And in the meantime, they're lying to you and saying it's all your fault. All the change you're seeing, it's your fault. You've done it. You can't be trusted in the environment. You have to be locked up in your cities. Look, the whole scam of carbon zero, and that's what it is. It's a scam. Carbon zero is a euphemism, because human beings are made out of carbon. We are carbon. And they want to reduce the population. And this will reduce the population. Just recently, they blew up a coal-powered fire station, a coal-powered electric plant in Germany. And it was only 6 years. I think it was built in 2021. It's only 5 or 6 years old. It had the latest technology. It had scrubbers that would take out SO2 and any particulates. So it was a clean burning coal-fired power station, a huge thing that cost billions to build. They just blew it up. They blew it up. They've shut down their nuclear power, and America, the West, Ukraine, America, MI6, who knows, blew up Germany's Nord Stream. So Germany is deindustrializing. How are people going to stay warm? How are they going to eat? How are they going to live when they've got no energy? Because they won't have energy. It's not windmills. Is not going to keep Germany on the map. So this is disgusting, and videos like this that are put out are just scaremongering. Yes, changes are coming, but there's nothing we can do to stop them. What should happen is people should cooperate, and they should decentralize everything to make us more resilient for this sort of thing. Because they keep talking about resilience, but they're not making us more resilient. They're making us more vulnerable by going on to green energy and onto solar panels and windmills. We just look how many tornadoes have just ripped through mid-America. And why are we getting all this extreme weather? Well, we're getting all this extreme weather because of the sun, and space weather because it's all the Earth is charging up like a capacitator with all the incoming radiation. We've just had one of the biggest coronal holes ever sweeping past Earth. It's still sweeping past Earth. So we're receiving an enormous amount of charge, which is why we're seeing an uptick in earthquakes. But they're not telling you anything truthful. So this is partly what's behind the geopolitics and the change. Because if the fact is that Chinese dynasties only ever lasted 400 years, about every 400 years or so, the dynasties would fall, and they would fall mainly because of things like famine, natural events, famine. People would rise up, and they would get rid of their government. And the governments back then, the Chinese would say, well, the mandate of heaven has been. They would see that as a sign from heaven. The mandate of heaven has been withdrawn. So we're seeing the same thing now. Civilizations cannot survive long periods of food shortages and famine. And this is what they're getting us ready for. This is why all the talk about, well, you're going to eat bugs. We're going to give you other food sources, but they're not coming clean. This can be overcome with cooperation, with global cooperation, with a diversity of food sources, with decentralization. Systems can be made more robust, but they're doing the opposite. They're breaking everything purposely, because they're going to use this opportunity to completely change the control grid. And that's what you're seeing, nothing else. Civilizations thrive when it's warmer, and they collapse when it gets colder. And that's quite apparent from all the data we have. So they're just lying. We are undergoing a climate excursion right now, but how fast it will accelerate and what damage it will do, nobody really knows. It's not a pole flip, but an excursion. And if we look here, for example, we have let me see if I can pull this down a bit. And here we can see extinction events in Australia and Eurasia, and it's based on geomagnetic field intensity, and they use the scientists who've written this paper have used proxy data like fungi influx rate and different kinds of fungi they found, and they've been able to see how it's increased and decreased, and they've used the proxy data and matched it to the geomagnetic field intensity. And the one, and this is about, we had a big die-off of megafauna in Australia. A lot of the big creatures died off. Here's an interesting one. This is the mammoth, I believe, and there were, about the time of well, up to the Younger Dryas, maybe even beyond. In fact, beyond, there were still mammoths in where Siberia is, some of the islands and the sea above Siberia. There were still mammoths alive around then, 10,000 years ago. So that's fairly recent. But there was a big megafauna die-off in Australia. And the one I'm interested in here is Homo neanderthalis, Neanderthal man here. There was a die-off, and this is about 42,000 years ago, and it coincides with a dip in the geomagnetic field intensity. And you can see that these dips in field intensity coincide with with the other proxy data. So we can see there's something going on here. That was the extinction of Neanderthal man. We are undergoing a magnetic excursion now. But how fast that's going, it's not a pole flip. Some people will say it's a complete reversal. It's not. It's an excursion. How fast it will go, whether it will accelerate or not, and what it will actually do, that's the question. But things are changing on a grand scale with the inner core of the Earth and with our space weather, and these things are not modeled by the modeling that the United Nations intergovernmental climate, whatever you call it, does. They don't even look at it. They don't look at solar forcing. It's ridiculous. It's obviously a political tool. It has nothing to do with actual science. And here is an article from University of New South Wales. Earth's magnetic field broke down 42,000 years ago and caused massive sudden climate change. So there we have it. The last major geomagnetic reversal triggered a series of dramatic events that have far-reaching consequences for our planet. And you can go and read the article, but basically they found a tree, petrified tree, and they did an analysis of that, and blah, 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 and they found that there was a major extinction event 42,000 years ago, which is called the Le Champ, which is the one we just looked at when we were basically using that and other proxy data. They found that it was around about that time that Neanderthal disappeared. So there are extinction events, and that's not been the only one. There's been others, but maybe not as well documented, maybe not as much data to show. And we're going through an excursion right now, but whether it will be a major excursion or a minor little blip, we don't really know. There are people that are scaremongering on it, but basically we just don't know. But something is happening, and there are people that understand that something is happening, and they're trying to use it to their advantage. So basically we have a bunch of climtards who are telling you stuff, only partially telling you partially the truth. We have others that are scaremongering and saying it's the end of the world. Well, the truth is somewhere in between, as usual. Things are changing, and we don't know how rapidly they're going to change. We don't know exactly what's going to happen, but they are changing, and they're not telling you about it. And I do call them climtards because I think some of these videos that are very slick and garner so many views and so many comments and are promoted so heavily I think they're all part of this campaign to make you think that it's your fault and you have to do without food, proper food or proper heating to save the planet, and that's just nonsense.